All right, it's time to start stitching. So I've got 3 strands of 3844, our light blue, on my needle, and I'm just going to tie a knot in the end of my thread. I make a loop, flip the end under and through, and I like to do it 2 times just to make a little bit bigger knot. So we'll go under and through again, and then just pull till that is sitting near the end of our thread. Now we're going to start with this blue. We're going to outline our dino starting this blue line, and we're going to start right here on his neck. So I'm going to come up from the back. Oh, I should mention real quick, I am stitching in a hoop stand. This does not mean you need a hoop stand. Usually I do not stitch in a hoop stand. I only do that for video so that my fabric holds still and you don't get dizzy. So coming up here at the start of our dino, right where this green part and blue part meet together, pull my thread all the way up, and then I'm gonna go a good little ways down his neck, put the needle in, and pull all the way down. And that's our first stitch. Now we're gonna make back stitch. So I'm gonna come up on the line, not next to the line, try again, on the line, right about this same distance, this stitch, we're gonna call this a stitch length away. So I've come all the way up, pulled my thread up, and I'm gonna go down right at the end of that previous stitch. And then we're just going to repeat this process all along the line. I'm going to come up a stitch length away on the line, and then I'm going to go down right on that previous stitch. Now, I know it can be hard to find where to put your needle, especially if you're looking from the front of the hoop. So you can see right here my needle is pressing into the fabric and I'm dragging it across. If you do that same thing from behind, you can see that I have a little point where my needle is. So you can drag your needle over to the line and then poke it through. And that can help you figure out where to put your needle. You can also flip your hoop over and look at the back side of the fabric, and you should be able to tell where the edge of our dinosaur is from behind, because the dinosaur is printed on the fabric, so it should look a little bit different between inside the dinosaur and the white background on the back. Now we're just going to keep following this line along as we go. Now you can see that right here I'm about to encounter where there are some bumps from the sequins we're going to use in a little while. I'm just going to pretend that those aren't there and keep stitching this blue line so that when we do sequins, there aren't any gaps in the line behind it, so that no matter where my sequins end up, I have a nice blue outline for the dinosaur. All right, I'm gonna stitch a little bit more here, and then we'll meet up and talk about what happens next. Okay, let's chat real quick. You can see I've been stitching for a little bit, and my tail end here, through my needle back down, is getting really close to where I'm stitching. I don't want to catch this tail end in my stitches because then I can't get my needle off and I can't advance and use all of this piece of thread. So what I'm gonna do when you start getting close to the tail here at the end, I'm just gonna adjust here so you can see on screen. I'm just gonna pull my needle, maybe, there we go. Pull my needle down the thread a little bit. And now you can see that my tail was right here, and now I've given myself this much more thread to work with. Now, if you've been struggling pulling your needle off the thread every time, here's what I want you to do. Let me get to pulling back up real quick. So pull down, and then pull up. So to help keep your needle on your thread, I grab the needle in 2 fingers, and then my next fingers, they hold the thread so that the thread doesn't get pulled off every time, that I just kind of hold all of it together. You can also try just holding right here at the eye of the needle, hold the needle and the thread so that no matter how hard I pull, I don't pull the needle off. All right, let's stitch some more. Okay, so I have made it to the end of this blue line. I'll finish the stitch here in just 1 second. And you can see that the edge right here is no longer blue. The edge of our dinosaur right here is the rest of his green tummy right here. So this is the last blue stitch we're gonna make right here. Then we're gonna jump and we're gonna do these dark blue lines around his legs. So here we are at the top of this line. And I'll just make a straight stitch here, and then I'll start into backstitch again, coming up on the line and going back down into the end of the previous stitch. Now this line, you might have to change your stitch length a little bit. You can see right here, I've got a choice to make. I can either make this be 2 stitches, or I could make them smaller and have it be 3 stitches. I think I'm going to go with 2 stitches so that I can end right there at this point. Corner. And now we're going to do the curve on the bottom. All right, at this point, I think I'm going to stop. I only have a little bit of thread left on my needle, and I want to start fresh here so that it's easier to anchor and tie off my thread. So I've made it to the end of this section of thread, and I'm going to flip over so I can show you how to tie off the thread on the back. Let's flip over. All right, here we are on the back, and you can see I've got a little bit of thread left. Usually I would stitch a little bit closer to the end of the thread, but I don't want to have to jump all the way over here and then only anchor to a couple stitches. So this is how we're going to end this piece of thread. We're going to slide our needle under these stitches, pull it tight, do it again, and then I'm going to come back down here a little bit. So I've went under twice right here, going to come down a little bit, maybe split some of the threads, go through them instead of just under them, and slide my needle through, pull it tight, and that is all we have to do. Now we just cut the thread and we're done. This ends the thread. So I'll get a new section of floss ready, and I'm going to start on the front here and stitch the rest of the blue. Okay, new strand of floss, not at the end. We're going to start right here and go around this foot. All right, we've finished going around up here, and now I've jumped from here all the way down to here. Now we're going to do backstitch again along the outsides of this shape. But what we're going to do first is we're going to stitch these little accent lines along his belly. Now you should be able to see them better on your print than on mine, but just know that's what we're doing. So we're going to come up on one edge and then down on the other edge. And I want to keep my needle points within the green part so that all of these stitches will get covered up by the border we're going to stitch next. So I keep coming up on the same side of each line and then going down on the opposite side of each line. Now the goal here is to cover up the line below. So if you put your needle right at the edge of each side of the line, once as you come up, excuse me, And then as you come down on the other side, your thread should cover up the line. Now, if you're off a little bit, don't worry about it. The best part of embroidery and all art is that you get to decide what it looks like. If you're off a little bit and it doesn't bug you, then just leave it. And if it bugs you, you can always unpick a stitch and try again. Now, I would vote for not bugs you and just say that it adds a little bit of character. It makes him special. It makes him your dinosaur rather than someone else's dinosaur. So we're going to keep going on all of these stripy lines, just making one big stitch until we get down here. All right, so I'm down in this corner, so I'm going to start here and I'm going to stitch this green line all the way up, over and back down. And we're just going to use backstitch just like we did around the outside of my dinosaur with the blue. So I'm going to come up and make my first straight stitch right here. And then I'll come up a stitch length away down the line. And then back into the end of that previous stitch to make a back stitch. And I'll just keep going around this whole green shape right here. All right, I've finished the outline. Now I'm going to jump from this section to this section. We're going to follow the same process. I'm going to do these middle stripy lines first, and then the top and the bottom line. All right, middle section done. Now we're going to jump again down to here, and this spot has no horizontal stripes, so, or vertical at this point, I guess. So we're just going to stitch down to the point here and then back along the bottom. Now you can see right here, our green outline technically goes all the way down to this point, but this stitch is covering up a bunch of that outline. So I'm just going to go about halfway where I start to see just a little bit of green instead of all the way down to that point. And this makes the last stitch of green here. So I'm going to tie off, and then we're going to get ready to come over here to the palm trees. All right, we're back. I've got 3 strands of 702, yes, 702 on my needle, and we're gonna work the leaves now. Now, my leaves look a little funny because I had to trace some of the lines so that you could see them, because the print, my print, is an early sample, so the contrast wasn't quite high enough for you. You shouldn't have any problem being able to see the lines. So what we're gonna do is what are we gonna do? We're gonna do the outside first. So we're gonna work this leaf here very first, and we're gonna do the outside, and then we're gonna add some accent to the inside. So I'm gonna start at the point, the base of the leaf, let's call it the base of the leaf, and go around the edge. Now you want to pay attention to your stitch lengths. Oh, I think I got a knot on the back. Nope, just a tangle. Stitch lengths so that you're making sure to end each line with a nice point of the leaf. We want to make sure those stitches are right on so that our leaf looks nice and pointy on the edges instead of soft. Right here through the point, that stitch. And again, this is just back stitch. Nice big stitches, kind of like when we did the blue around the dino. Because these aren't super curvy spots here. They're nice straight spots. So I'm going to continue all the way around this leaf, and then we'll talk about what's going to happen in the middle. All right, we've finished the outline of this leaf, and now we're gonna add some accents in here. And this is where you get to be creative, because you get to decide where the line goes. So we're gonna do 3 or 4 lines on each side of our center line. And they're gonna go from the center spine out towards the edge of the leaf. Kind of like this, right? You know when you hold up a leaf and you flip it over and you look at the back and there's all those veins that kind of go out from the center to the edge of the leaf? That's what we're gonna do now. So we're gonna come up on the center line, anywhere you want, and then we're gonna go out towards the edge, kind of following the curve of the leaf. And then I'm gonna do that again. I think I'm gonna put 3 on this side of the leaf. Here, and you can see this is kind of the curve, so I'm going to go out like that. I think I'm going to put 1 more up here in the point and take it over here. And you can see when I get close to the edge, I'm not putting my needle down next to the stitch. I'm kind of scooting it over a little bit and sliding the tip under just a little bit so that when I pull this stitch through, oh, but I got a knot. Okay, knots happen. It's totally fine. Nobody's fault. Most all knots, if you loosen this part right here that is wrapped around the other parts, you'll find that it just pulls right back out. Just be gentle so that you can work its way out. So, like I said, I pulled that stitch under this, so there's no gap here. Now, since we're at the tip of the needle, we're gonna work leaf. We're gonna work back the other direction, coming up on the side, and now I'm gonna go to the other side to create some spines. On this side, I think I want 2 to meet here in the middle, maybe, and come out to the side, and then 1 in this big empty spot right here. And come out to the side. I think I'm going to do 1 more from the base of this spine here, all the way out over there. Now I'm just going to run a line of backstitch up the leaf. So starting here at the end of my line, first straight stitch, and I come up with the back stitch. Now, while I have my needle here, you might have to move some of these stitches out of the way a little bit to remember where your line went to. And it looks like my line goes all the way up to here. So I'm going to finish this stitch and remember where that spot was, and come up all the way here, and then finish this line of backstitch. Now, I'm going to think about where I've finished here. This leaf is done, and I need to do these other 3. Now, if I pull this thread across behind to over here to stitch, you know what? Strike that. So we finished this leaf. And I'm going to think about where I want to go next, which leaf I want to do, because we got these 4 left. Now they all start in this middle here, so it doesn't really matter which one you do next. You just got to pick, so you know. I'm going to stitch these leaves, and then we will talk about the trunk here. All right, I finished all the leaves. And let's talk about them real quick for a second. So these front 2 leaves, they're the biggest. So they have more little spines than, say, this back leaf that's pretty covered. It only has 2 or 3 on each side. So think about that as you're stitching. Also, if adding these little spines is stressing you out, or you don't like the look of it, you can also choose to just stitch the straight line down the middle and the outline. You get to pick which way you like the best. Okay, we're going to move on to the trunk now, and we're going to start at the bottom, and we're going to work up because it's a little bit easier stitching wise. So I've got 3 strands of 4, 3, 5, the brown color on my needle. Excuse me. And we're going to start down here right next to our dino's body. Now we're going to make just some long stitches. In this case, it's a short one to start to fill these up. So I'm going to go to the corner and down. And then I'm going to go up to the top of this piece where it intersects with the next section. And then I'm going to go down at that same corner spot. Now, we've stitched bottom section. We're going to stitch the next section. So I'm going to come up here to the top of this line. And then I'm going to go down in the corner. Then I'm going to go over to this side, right next to our dino, back down in the same corner. Then I'm going to finish this section by doing the vertical. So I'm again going to go to the top and then down in right by the dino. Now we're going to repeat the process for this one. So we're going to go up to the top, down in the corner, and you'll see that the corner is outside the top of this previous line, right? These 2 spots are not in the same location. So I'm not going to this hole. I'm going to outside where the edge of this top shape is. Okay, there we go. And now I'm going to do the horizontal line. Go down here. And then I'll do the other vertical line. And now it's just a matter of repeating my way up the stem, not the stem, the trunk. So vertical line, then horizontal line. Oh, I have another knot. So vertical line, then horizontal line, last vertical line. All right, this horizontal line is a little bit tricky. You can see that there's a little bit right here that we can see. So we're going to stitch this part and then we'll stitch a little bit in between those 2 green stitches so that this horizontal line looks like it goes all the way across the trunk and not just on the outside. So I'm going to sneak my needle up right here and then slide it under the green just a little bit and down. And then I'll finish with 1 horizontal spot right here. Oh, no, there's a little bit of gap, so I'm going to add just a little bitty horizontal stitch right there. All right, now with brown on my needle, I'm going to work my way up this trunk, and then I'll do green again and stitch these leaves the same way I did those. So you can see this trunk has a lot more covered. So you'll have some funky bits like right in here that you might have to add a little stitch, or right here on the edge there might be a little bit that I need to add. We're just going to work our way around the leaves that are there from the bottom to the top, continuing to fill in the trunk as much as we can. All right, that finishes the brown. Like I said, I'll come back with this same green and use the same method for those leaves, and then we'll be ready to add our sequins and finish our dino. All right, it's finally the moment we've been waiting for. we get to do the sequins. So these dark blue circles, they're our darkest blue sequins. Light blue circles, light blue sequins. Darker green sequins. Light green sequins, all right? We're gonna start with the blue and work, dark blue, and work our way up. So I've got 3 strands of 825 on my needle, and I'm gonna start over here on the left. Now, we can attach the sequins in 2 ways, and I'm gonna show you the easier way first. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come up right in the middle of the circle. And whoa, that was exciting. All of my sequins just jumped around. All right, get out of the way. Ooh, okay. I'm gonna grab a dark blue sequin. You can get it with the point of your needle, or you can hold it and poke your needle through. And I'm gonna pull it all the way down until it sits right on its circle. Now, all we're gonna do is we're just gonna go down on the outside edge. Oh, I'm gonna have to move my sequins. I'm gonna keep jumping. And then I'm gonna go up on the other edge. So I just went down over here. I'm going to the other side. I'm gonna go up, and then I'm gonna go down into the center. So that sequin is stuck on good now, not going anywhere. I'm gonna pause real quick and organize my sequins. All right, and we're back. Got our sequins. So one thing I forgot to tell you is that our sequin is a little bit like a little bitty plate or bowl, that the edges curl up a little bit. So you can either do it like this, where it's like a plate or a bowl, where the edges come up at the sides, or you can flip them over and do it like this, where it's like a little mound or a little hill. I like them most like a bowl instead of a little mound or hill, but you get to pick. I would suggest trying to keep them all the same way though, because that will help it feel a little bit more consistent. So let's talk about how we do this sequin again. I'm gonna go up in the middle here, pull this guy all the way up, and then I'm gonna grab the sequin in my fingers, poke the needle into the center there, slide it all the way down, and then I'm gonna go on the outside, pull down, then come up on the other side and go down through the middle. So that's way to attach sequins number 1. Let's talk about way number 2. Let's go down to this guy right here. Again, we're gonna pull our thread up straight through the middle. Gonna grab another sequin, and I'm going to thread it onto my needle. Slide it all the way down. Now this time, we're gonna try and make a French knot, which is a nice little knot that'll hold this in place like a dot in the center. So the first thing you wanna do is create kind of a circle with your thread. So my thread goes towards my left hand, all the way around off screen, back over here to my right hand. I'm right-handed, so I'm gonna hold my needle in the right hand, thread in the left hand. If you're left-handed, your circle would look like this. Your thread would go to the right, around to your hand. So my right-handed folks, thread is going towards our left hand, circles around to needle in the right hand. Now we're gonna wrap the thread 1, 2 times around the needle. Then we're gonna stick it back into the center of our sequin. Now I'm gonna hold this thread gently so that the thread that's wrapped around stays right down here as I pull the rest of my thread through. And then I just pull it down tight, and then there's a little knot, and our sequin is stuck. So let's do that again. Coming up in the middle, grabbing a sequin, Slide it all the way down. And now let's make a French knot. So thread makes a circle, goes to my left hand, around, over to needle in my right hand. Now, you probably have to set your hoop down on a table to do this, and that's okay. So, hoop is sitting down. We wrap once, twice around my needle, and then you can see I'm just going to put it right back into the center of the sequin. Make sure the thread is right here at the bottom. Hold on with one hand and pull through with the other. And that is how you make a French knot. Now, however you want to attach the sequins is up to you. You can try a couple French knots, and if that's not working, go back to just one stitch on each side, and you will have a sparkly, awesome dinosaur, no matter which way you choose to do it. Now, I'm a pretty big fan of French knots, so I'm going to keep going the French knot method. You keep doing whatever works best for you. Whoop. Didn't get that one all the way up. So I'm just going to work color by color from dark blue to light blue, dark green, and then light green, all the way up the top. And you can see that the circles for my sequins up here, they overlap a little bit. So these sequins, they're going to touch. They're friends, and that is 100% okay. We want the sequins to be really close together so they look like they're spines or scales on our dinosaur. So don't worry when they get close together. There at the end. That's why we're starting at the bottom and working to the top. So these ones right here at the top can just sit on top of everything else and have nothing in the way to bother them. All right, my last dark blue sequin. Now after this guy, I'm going to tie off my thread, and I'm going to change back to 3844 like we did for the outside of our dinosaur to do these light ones so that the thread blends in and matches like it does here to the dark ones. I gave you a little bit of extra floss and a couple extra sequins so that A, you could lose a sequin because they're tricky to keep a hold of, but B, so you could practice and experiment and see what method works best for the sequins for you. So I'll finish the dark green with 701 on my needle, and then I will do the light green with 704, same color we did here on the belly, to finish. And you can see starting here that my sequins are starting to overlap, and I'm just letting them overlap as I add new ones on. Not worried about too much about who's on top of who or what's going on. Just trying to get my knot in the center of the circle and in the center of the sequin. Now this last row along the top here is supposed to poke up a little bit and cover this stitching. So you're doing it right when the sequin touches his friends, but also covers up that top line. All right, that is a finished dinosaur. Now you can check out my video for how to finish the back and get this hoop ready to display, or you can check out the beginner's guide, which you get digital access to with your kit. I hope you've had the best time stitching your dino, and I hope we see you again. Happy stitching!